All right, looks like we're holding steady here for folks that are joining us. Welcome. My name is Tyler Lussier. I serve as one of our Associate Deans of Admission in the Office of Admission here at Bates College. And thank you for joining us on this conversation around community and as we think about it more broadly here at Bates, community engagement and what that really means for our community here at Bates. So I am joined by a whole host of folks who will help explain to you what all that means and hopefully give you a better sense of some unique pieces to the Bates student experience. We know if you're looking at us today, you may be looking at a lot of other small liberal arts colleges, but this idea of community engagement for us is a really special part to the student experience. And so we hope this conversation will help illuminate a lot of important pieces for us at Bates and why we think our community is incredibly special here. So I am actually joined by two of my colleagues and three wonderful current students, as well as the Dean of Admission, who is helping to support us here today. So I'm gonna let our Dean of Admission and Financial Aid introduce herself quickly, and then I'll have the rest of our hosts introduce herself. Go ahead, Leigh.
Great. Well, thank you, Tyler. And I just want to give everyone a warm welcome. Thank you for joining us for this session. I chose this session intentionally where I'm a proud Lewiston resident. I live not too far from campus and engage in the city of Lewiston, but also the city of Auburn and Maine broadly in a wide array of ways well beyond Bates. So just really thrilled to be with you all tonight. I'm going to let the panelists take the show from here, but certainly if I can chime in at any moment, would love to do so. So thanks again.
All right, Darby, would you like to kick us off?
Sure thing. Hi, everybody. My name's Darby Ray. I'm on the faculty here at Bates in the Religious Studies Department, but my main job is that I direct the Harward Center for Community Partnerships. It's named after a previous president at Bates, Don Harward. I live here in Lewiston, within walking distance of campus. I have one daughter who's out of the house at this point, but another one who will be a senior at the local high school here, and really love living here and am very involved in the community.
All right, and Ellen?
Hey everyone, I'm Ellen Alcorn. I have the good fortune of being involved with the Harward Center in a couple of different ways. One is I help to facilitate community engaged learning at the college, which means that through your courses, students get to get involved with the community, helping out with an organization or doing some research for one of our partners. And then the other thing I do is I direct student leadership programming, particularly one that you might be interested in knowing about is I direct the Bonner Leader Program, which is a 4-year civic engagement, civic leadership program that kind of runs parallel across your college experience here, and students typically apply for that in the summer of their first year. So keep an eye out if you decide to come to Bates. You'll be hearing from me this summer before you enroll. And I'm the only person at the Harward Center who doesn't live in the local community. I was well ensconced in Portland before I took this job at the Harward Center many years ago, but I am very involved.
Ellen, we'll forgive you. We'll forgive you.
I know. But I'm very involved. Most of my civic life happens up in Lewiston, and it's just an amazing place to work.
Awesome, thank you, Ellen. And then I'll send it over to our students for quick introductions, and then we'll talk a little bit more broadly about what different programming is going on here at Bates. But I'll kick it off to Christopher first.
Hello, I'm Christopher. I am from Burlington, Vermont, and I'm a rising senior at Bates. I'm a double major in physics and studio art, and I have general education concentration in applying mathematical methods. I'm also part of the men's cross country and track and field teams, and I'm a part of the Bates High Altitude Ballooning Club, where we launch and retrieve weather balloons in and around New England and go adventure in the woods looking for those and look at the cool footage that we collect and the data. Little bit about what I'm involved in, but I'm excited to share some of my engagement in the Lewiston community with you today. So I'll be sharing more later.
That's awesome, Christopher, thank you. And then we've got two students who are actually roommates as well. So Dylan and Georgia, you wanna introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi everyone. Thanks so much for being here with us today. My name is Dylan. I'm a rising senior at Bates. I'm from San Francisco, California. At Bates, I'm an environmental studies major with a concentration in ecology and earth systems, and I'm pursuing a double minor in education and religious studies. At Bates, I'm the president of our feminist collective. I've worked in our academic resource commons as a peer tutor, and I really love hanging out at all of the Lewiston public schools through my education minor. So thanks so much for being here with us today.
Hi, my name's Georgia Moses. I'm from Arlington, Massachusetts. I am a rising senior as well. I'm a politics major and a Spanish and education double minor. I do a ton of stuff in the community through the Harward Center as well as a variety of my classes. What else? I am a TA for an education class, and I am also the box office manager at the theater. So I check people in when we have shows. So that's fun. Yeah, thanks for being here.
Awesome. Well, thank you for those introductions. And again, to really kick it off, I think it's important to understand really the scope of the Harward Center for Community Partnerships, what that department entails. And then we can talk a little bit about community engaged learning, obviously some specific examples that our students have been engaged with, but also really interested in any questions you folks might have. So just for orientation, you'll notice at the bottom of your screen, there should be a Q&A opportunity. So please, throughout the entire course of this presentation, please feel free to send in your questions, whatever they may be, whether for whatever panelists, and we'll do our best to try to answer those live, or if I can send any links for any additional information, I can also send those kind of behind the scenes. But to kind of give an explanation of what the Harward Center is all about, I was gonna send it over to Darby to kind of give a larger explanation of what that department really is all about.
Sure, thanks, Tyler. So the Harward Center is the hub. Oh, sorry, gosh, I'm hearing sirens in the background. I'm outside, can you tell? It's a beautiful Maine summer evening. The Harward Center is the college's hub for community engagement. So basically we're the place that's tasked with thinking about how does the college relate to the off-campus community? How can the state of Maine and the great outdoors and our local more urban environment, how can all of those contexts enrich a student's experience, both in the classroom and outside of the classroom? So we do a ton of work with faculty and with students to think about how their academic interests and their non-academic interests could connect to the state of Maine and to the off-campus community. And then our other job is to make friends in the off-campus community. So we just get to go around and stick ourselves at every possible table and hang out in local businesses and go to art walks and serve on nonprofit boards and just make friends in the off-campus community and across the state of Maine. People in our office are elected officials. One just finished being the mayor of Lewiston. And so to just have our hands in as many different pots of goodness around the state of Maine as possible so that we can then bring those connections and those opportunities to Bates and connect students and their interests to all of those opportunities. So that's really what we do at the Harward Center, both during the school year, and we also have summer opportunities. So just helping students think about how the sort of larger world can connect to the sort of things that we think of when we think of college, the campus, the amazing on-campus community, the rigorous academic program. How can real-world projects and partners play a role in the Bates education and kind of all-around experience? And so that's what we deal with every day at the Harward Center, both through the curriculum, through clubs, through the arts, just every possible way. I think one thing that sets us apart, if I can brag a tiny little bit about Bates, is that so all colleges have opportunities to connect off campus, obviously. But Bates has been known for a long time as a national leader in this, partly because for decades now, we've rooted this community engagement in the academic program, in students learning, in the central pursuit of being in college. And so it's not just at the edges, it's just not what you do through things kind of on the perimeter of the educational experience. It's right smack dab in the middle. So it's hard to avoid in a great way. And then it's also available all around the edges of the experience on a sports team and other things that our students will tell you all about. But the core of it is in the academic program, because we recognize that it's important that learning be connected to the real world, and that it not be just some kind of ivory tower experience. Do you see that mosquito flying around? You might find me smacking my screen. Okay, that's enough from me. Thank you, Tyler.
Don't get eaten alive on the porch. Well, Ellen, I know obviously with a lot of your work with the Bonner Leader Program, some folks may not know what the Bonner Leader Program is all about. Can you maybe explain a little bit more about that program, and also how students can be engaged, not just with community engaged learning, but even internships and other opportunities through the Harward Center?
Well, so first of all, I'm going to pick up where Darby left off. It's true that we are nationally known for civic engagement work, and that's largely, as Darby said, because we do have so many engaged faculty who are really interested in making community engaged learning a central part of students' experiences. But the other thing that I think really sets us apart is where we're located. We are located in a small, I grew up in New York City, so to me, it's Maine's second largest city, but to me it seems small. And there are an incredible number of assets here, but also needs, and our students can dig in and get engaged in real world issues and problems and see the difference that they make. I think that is, and our students can talk more about that, but I think that's one of the things that makes it really exciting to do this kind of work at Bates. And by now, maybe you're hungry for some examples. So I'll give you some examples. So as Tyler mentioned, one of the things we have here is a program called the Bonner Leader Program, which is part of a national network of schools that provide students with stipends, and then we require them to spend a significant amount of time working with an issue in the local community, in this case in Lewiston, and then additional time on campus in a kind of having a cohort, kind of a team experience, reflecting together, learning together. And our Bonners are doing all different kinds of things. I can talk about the Bonners, and I can talk a little bit about community engaged learning too, and then the students can chime in with their experiences. One thing that I do for the college is I connect students through courses, through volunteer work, through leadership programs like the Bonner program with youth serving organizations. So K-12 schools, after school programs. So on the academic side, every single student who takes an education course, for every course that they take, has to spend 30 hours over the course of a semester in a classroom setting. And so that's about 3 hours a week, and it's a very intensive part of being an education student. Many of our Bonners are also really interested in working with youth, and so they might, and I'm going to let Georgia talk about this in a minute, but they might go work with youth who live at a low-income housing complex, or they might go work with youth at a downtown after-school homework help and enrichment program. I think Dylan and Christopher have been engaged in things outside of education as well. So is that right? So maybe let you guys talk about some other examples. If you have some questions specifically about the Bonner Leader Program, just pop them in the chat and I'd be happy to answer them that way. But maybe I'll think the students would be more interesting. So I'll shut up now and let them talk.
Georgia, do you want to kick us off with some conversation around pieces that you've been engaged with?
Yeah, sure. So I started my community engagement freshman year through my education courses, which I think is super common at Bates. And so that sent me into a variety of different classroom environments across Lewiston, whether it was an English language learners classroom in a high school or an elementary school classroom. Like truly, my experience has been the opportunities are endless, I would say, in the schools here. And then from there, I wanted to carry my interest in community engagement further. And so I have been both a community outreach fellow, and this summer I'm a summer civic fellow. And so as a community outreach fellow, my job is to connect Bates students with the community and also do my own sort of community work. And so I've had the opportunity to work with Hillview Family Development, which, as Ellen mentioned, is an affordable housing community in Lewiston. And there I have done a variety of different types of programming, mainly art programming for the kids that live there. And then additionally, I've worked at Art Van, which is a local nonprofit that also does other sorts of art therapy with kids. So that sort of is my experience.
Yeah, and I can just tack on a couple more experiences to Georgia. So as she was saying, there's a lot of education students at Bates because we have a really wonderful education department. So working in schools is something that is certainly enriching to somebody who wants to be a teacher, but it's also just enriching in a million other different ways. And I've had really wonderful times working in the Lewiston school system. And then in addition, if any of you have attended our info sessions, you do know about our thesis requirement at Bates. But in addition to a thesis requirement, we also have a variety of majors that require capstones, that require community engaged capstones. And so environmental studies is one of those departments. And if you're an environmental studies major at Bates, you write a thesis and you also are required to do a community engaged capstone. And these capstone projects look different every year because environmental studies professors are constantly checking in with people they know in the community. They're checking in with Ellen and Darby and folks at the Harward Center to see what people in Lewiston need as it relates to sustainability and the environment. And so they look different every semester. And last semester I completed my capstone and I was working at Lewiston Middle School to do a waste audit. And so we basically went into the school every day and we weighed all of the trash that every single kid at Lewiston Middle School created in the hopes of piloting a compost program. And in Lewiston, we don't have any compost. So we were hoping to create a commercial composting situation in Lewiston. And although we did not achieve this goal in a semester because it was definitely a pretty tall order for us, we're hoping that it continues this year. And so that's just one example of a way that, maybe youth engagement and community engagement in general work its way into academics in other ways that are not just for education minors. And I'll just give a couple more environmental based examples for you all. There were people that were doing lead soil sampling in vacant lots in Lewiston. So there used to be, I think, a pretty big lead problem like all over Maine. And so Bates students in the ES department were just going around to vacant lots and doing some really important and valuable work, doing soil sample testing. People were checking out who is using the bike trails, who is using public transportation, and how can we make it better. So these are all sorts of projects that environmental studies majors like myself were engaging in through our classwork, but also just getting into Lewiston in a bunch of different ways. And I will pass it off to Christopher.
Thanks. So for me, I feel like I might represent, more of your average Bates student that, comes in and is super excited, but doesn't necessarily seek out like these awesome opportunities that are there, but happens to kind of bump into them over the course of their time at Bates. So for me, I saw this when a friend asked me to be a community liaison for a club of theirs. And so I got to be I was part of the club, but also I think Darby might have mentioned this, that every club at Bates has a attached partner, a community liaison, that works to get the club involved in opportunities in the community. So one of those is like the Farwell Pumpkin Festival in the fall, and just basically opportunities for Bates students to, go be a part of the community and events that are happening around, or help out. Also, the sports teams all have an attached community liaison. So on the cross country and track and field teams, I've done activities with my teams, which have been, great team bonding experiences, but also perfect opportunities to get out into the community. So Bates really pushes community engagement in all aspects of the activities that you're going to do at Bates. Something that I also want to touch on is that, at Bates, it's not just students going into the community, but it's also the community being welcomed onto campus. I think something you'll hear is that there's no walls around campus. There's literally no walls around campus. So people are free to walk on and off. And one of the things I've seen is just, going to, saying hi to Georgia at the ticket booth, going to, some of the shows that Bates puts on, but then also seeing community members coming to see those shows and being there is a pretty cool thing to see. And also just in my studio art courses, there's figure drawing, which is open for community members to come on and, pay a small fee to, have a model to draw for an evening hour. And so I'll be there doing my homework and drawing, but then there'll also be community members there that I get to talk to and, be like, oh, wow, you're also still like drawing every day or something like that, even though it's not your career. That's awesome that you get to come here to Bates and I get to interact with these community members. So I think that in my experience, just seeing, the ways that I haven't really gone out there to look at these opportunities yet, I've stumbled across so many and been so involved in those ways.
So just a reminder to folks, don't hesitate, throw any and all questions in there. I know that for us, we're always excited to field any questions you might have. But in the meantime, I know, Darby, you mentioned at the start of this, and Ellen did as well, the unique nature of our community. And I think for students that are looking at a lot of schools in the Northeast, knowing the makeup of the Northeast, sometimes their communities can be a differentiating factor. For us in Lewiston, obviously our community is a little different than much of the Northeast. So can you maybe explain a little bit of what makes our community so special, and also how we take advantage of the hospitals that are located next to us and some of the community-based organizations in our community?
Sure, and Leigh may want to jump in here too, because she's been here longer than I have, or Ellen has either as well. But yeah, Lewiston Auburn is a really interesting community. It was at one point the manufacturing jewel of New England. That was years ago, famous for making shoes and bedspreads. And still some of that is alive and well. So for example, in the last Summer Olympics, if you watched the opening ceremony and you saw all the US athletes walking through, they were all wearing red, white, and blue boat shoes that were all made right here in Lewiston, Maine. Shout out to the shoe production legacy of Lewiston. So there still is manufacturing here, but when sort of manufacturing started to move south and then overseas, Lewiston was one of those northeastern places that fell on enormously hard economic times. And then we've been seeing since then this kind of clawing back and into sort of economic stability. And more recently, we've had an influx since the year 2000, I think. Yeah, we're celebrating the 20th year of a really dynamic influx of immigrants from African nations, starting with Somalia, but now at the high school, there are over 25 languages spoken. So a lot of times people think of Maine as like just, white state. And it is white, and we also get some snow, and that makes it even whiter. But in Lewiston, Auburn, it's an amazingly multicultural, diverse place with lots of languages, different religions, different cultures, and restaurants and food and celebrations and that kind of thing. So it's, we're proud of our history. We've been a community of immigrants really from the very beginning, starting with Italians and then having a very large influx of French Canadians. One of the coolest things in my time here has been seeing some of our longtime French-speaking residents winding up having conversations in French with some of our newer immigrants, right? So you have an old white lady with white hair at the grocery store, and then this young Black man, and they just start speaking French, and they're like, oh my God, another, French speaker. And so it's amazing how across race and across generations, you can have these coming together times that are really meaningful. Leigh, do you want to add anything about the unique nature of this community and what it brings?
Sure. Darby, I think, explained it beautifully and painted the picture as best one possibly could. I think maybe just to tie Darby's comments to Ellen's comment early on, imagining some of you reside in larger urban areas, so where Ellen's from New York and Dylan being from San Francisco, I think the piece to wrap your brain around is that it's urban by Maine standards, but all of the diversity, both in the population, diversity in terms of the architecture, diversity in terms of the landscape that Darby just described, it's not going to be immediately in your face or right out your doorstep because we have space. And so things are spread out. And I'm saying this in a rather basic, literal way, but trying to imagine many of you haven't had the opportunity to visit Bates yet and may not in the next few months in light of COVID. Trying to imagine that it'll take a bit to really experience and integrate yourself in the community. But once you do, you'll sort of pinch yourself and say, wait a minute. I thought I was going to that white rural Maine, or I thought I was going to that sort of isolated area. Is it the thriving metropolis that is Manhattan? No, no place is New York, but it does have a lot of that vibrancy. And then the piece that I'm sure Chris could probably speak to, just given his running, is that at the same time, very much like that, you can be in the woods, and you can do so quickly. And so you could be downtown, get a bagel, as much as you could be in what is called Thorn Craig Bird Sanctuary in a matter of, well, maybe by Chris's running standards, minutes. Others driving, it could get you there faster. But so all that to say, I think Darby painted it beautifully. The history is rich. People take a lot of pride in it. And it's a really unique place.
Can I just add that we gave a lot of education examples of ways that students can get engaged, but the truth is, to Darby's point and to Leigh's point, there are, even though it might not look like a thriving metropolis, there really are, you know, I challenge you to come up with an issue that we couldn't find you a way to kind of plug into in a really robust way, not in just a surface way, but in a really robust way, in a way that sometimes can lead to real change happening in this community. I saw there was a question about getting involved in working with sort of issues related to people who are incarcerated. And yes, we do have ways to connect students to restorative justice issues and to doing so. There's a program that allows our students to do correspondence work with people who are incarcerated. If our colleague Sam Boss were here, who's my counterpart, I do everything education related, and then he does everything else, he would rattle off a million examples. We had a student a couple of years ago who was doing her thesis, and Darby might remember the details of this better than I do, but she was trying to understand the extent to which people who are incarcerated in the local jail have mental health issues. And she did incredible research that went right back to people who are engaged in running the jail system, the prison system. And that led to real reforms. So, Darby mentioned working with immigrants. If you're interested in working with adults who are refugees and all of the issues that go along with that, we've got tons of ways for students to get connected. So anyway, I challenge you to keep throwing issues into the Q&A. And Darby and I and the students who are here can probably just like that help you think of a way to get connected very robustly.
Yeah, I was just going to say, is it okay if I jump in, Tyler?
Yep.
Okay. I was just going to say that particular student's project, one of the things that was representative, one of the ways in which it's representative of things that happen all the time at Bates is that, there was a partnership between the student at Bates, the sheriff, and the Androscoggin, the county jail, and then Tri-County Mental Health Services, the kind of public health agency for this part of Maine. And so the student came in, got these two organizations connected to each other in a new way. And so now those organizations, once the student was gone, they're still really productively working together around this issue that the student, Katie Stevenson, her thesis really surfaced. And one of the things I think that might set us apart from as wonderful as Manhattan and New York City are, one of the things about being small and urban is that everything is here. Oh my gosh, sorry, my battery. Okay, sorry. Everything's here, but also we're small enough that we know each other. So we can say, oh, Eric, the sheriff, meet Catherine, the executive director of Tri-County Mental Health Services, and let's get you together and get you around a table. And or Bates gets pulled in that same kind of folksy way that when you know each other because your kids go to school together or you live down the street from each other, you can problem solve in really intimate and highly effective ways.
Well, that was great. I didn't have to do anything, and that conversation kept going. So as you can tell, there are a million different examples. The only thing I would add, actually born and raised right here in Lewiston. So Lewiston's my hometown, so I'm very biased when it comes to talking about our community. But as we mentioned, the kind of 20th anniversary of welcoming so many new community members, it's also important to understand just how much our community has really blossomed over the last 20 years. I actually now live on downtown Lisbon Street, which is really our main street district within our community, which is about a 10-minute to 15-minute walk, though I know Lee's probably made it in like 11, right to downtown Lewiston. And so what's really important is when I was a kid in the 90s, most of Lisbon Street had kind of been left behind. As many people alluded to, many of the manufacturing jobs left, and Lewiston was in a very precarious position. A little bit of a Lewiston cliche, French and Irish, both sides of my family came to Lewiston because of the mills and have been in this community for decades. And so those industrial jobs leaving really left a pretty big hole. But when you come to downtown Lisbon Street now, you'll notice whether it's the revitalization of the public theater scene, or you think about the restaurants and opportunities there. And while there's still a lot of work to be done to really understand where Lewiston is today versus maybe where it was in the 90s is really incredible. And I think that full circle story, as you think about a city being built up on immigrants that came to work in these incredible mills back in the day, and then also really a revitalization of many new community members who they themselves were immigrants and reinvested in small businesses right here on Lisbon Street, I think is one of the incredible kind of bonds that ties this community together. And as Darby mentioned, to have language bring communities together. But I think Lisbon Street especially is a piece that so many Lewiston folks are proud of. And I think to really see that become revitalized is something that's really, really important to the community more broadly. But as I mentioned at the outset, I'm a little biased. But I do want to kick it to the students for a very easy softball question. I'll send it to Dylan and Georgia first. What are your favorite things to do in Lewiston? Pretty easy, but I'll send it to you and then we'll let Christopher take it too.
Sure. So I really like to run, probably not in the same way that Christopher does, but we have a beautiful path along the Androscoggin River that is really very beautiful and peaceful. Tons of trees. It's amazing in the fall, and I love to run on that river path. And I'm also going to steal one that I feel like the other students here will be annoyed by, but Forage Market is one of like the best breakfast bagel coffee shops that I've ever been to, and I love spending time there and doing work there and eating there. Yeah, it's the best.
And recently, George and I have been going there probably way too often to take to go. So we do love Forage. Yeah, and I'll just add on, I forgot to say this at the beginning, but I for one semester served as the community liaison for the Bates Outing Club, which is one of our oldest clubs on campus. And one of our big projects that we were trying to do the semester that I was on the board of directors was we were trying to have a bunch of elementary schoolers come hang out at Thorn Crag, which is something that Lee mentioned earlier. It's a beautiful bird sanctuary that's right in Lewiston. As others were saying earlier, there's a lot of accessible green space in Lewiston, which is wonderful. Second biggest city in Maine, but definitely a lot of green space here. And Thorn Crag is a beautiful, beautiful green space here in Lewiston. And it's even more beautiful in the winter, in my opinion. So going there for walks, going there with some elementary schoolers, whatever floats your boat. Those are definitely some of my favorite things to do in Lewiston, as well as eat a lot.
Yeah, that was super great, covering all of my main topics. But there's also the restaurant Da Vinci's is one of my favorite places. The cross country team has a breakup dinner at the end of every season, and we go there and we eat baskets of garlic knots, and I absolutely love them. They're so good. But Da Vinci's is a great place. Also, just my friends going, across the river into Auburn, and we'll go to the Goodwill to get our costumes for the 80s or 90s dance, or we will just go to Walmart and like walk around for a bit. Like there's fun times just even in the local Walmart. So, but yeah, Thorn Crag, the river trails, lots of fun places.
I was just noticing, oops, sorry. I was just looking at the questions. Tyler. Can I take one of those?
Sure, absolutely.
So I noticed somebody was asking about museums and historical societies and work with those. And we have an amazing museum that focuses on local culture and local history called Museum LA. And our students are constantly doing projects with them, whether curating exhibits around the history of music as a really central part of the Franco culture here in Lewiston, or working on the silk screens and creating marketing materials, that kind of thing. Our students have, could y'all be quiet? Our students have collected oral histories from both recent immigrants as well as immigrants who've immigrated here a long, long time ago. So lots of great connections with that museum, also with our historical society. So a lot of great projects there. I was thinking of what other, there was another question, really every single question. I was like, yes, I have a great answer for that one, but I'll pass it back to Tyler because I probably was not supposed to have just hijacked this. So back to you.
No, Darby, you can host the whole thing. We're good. I guess I'll throw a softball question to Leigh because when you have the Dean of Admission and Financial Aid join you, I think you should kick her a question. Leigh, I know you have probably a great answer for this, but for one student who asked, what would you recommend or say to students who are interested in Bates and are undecided? What would you say?
Awesome. I would say we celebrate that 110%. So Bates is a liberal arts college. We welcome students on their application to indicate an area of academic interest, but by no means do we hold you to that stated interest. So oftentimes when reading the applications or in admission review committee, when discussing applicants and then we see a student states, oh, I'm interested in neuroscience or I'm interested in Spanish, we'll say, great, thanks for sharing. With all due respect, excited to see where you actually land. So there's data out there that students at Bates will oftentimes change their major 2, 3, sometimes even up to 5 times. And part of that is because you have until the end of your sophomore year to actually declare your major. So you have a lot of freedom and movement in those first 2 years to explore and dabble and taste test and see what's out there. I also think it's awesome to hear what Dylan, Georgia, Chris all study. And I think that, to bring it back to the Harward Center, shows that if you do come to Bates undecided, the Harward Center could be an awesome way, sort of an entree, as you think about exploring various academic areas of interest. So we certainly celebrate undecided. Don't feel like you'll be left out in the applicant pool in any particular way. And we recognize you're 17, and to know exactly what you wish to study, never mind what a career path might be at 17. Not to say it's an impossibility, but speaking from personal experience, I think leave it undecided and see where you land.
Awesome. Thank you, Leigh. And then this other question will probably be for Ellen or Darby or both. I also live on downtown Lisbon Street, so there's some cars in the background, sorry. To maybe talk about, obviously, as we navigate the global pandemic, this term and maybe potentially the whole year may look radically different than some students may be accustomed to. So can you maybe talk, and they may still be designing it, what this year may look like from a community engagement perspective as we take health, obviously, as the utmost concern?
So I'll start and then hand it over to Ellen to amplify. We have decided, out of concern both for the well-being of our students and for the off-campus community, and in conversation with our partners off-campus, that most community engagement, at least this fall, possibly for the whole year, will be remote. And what's been super exciting this summer has been, for my colleagues and me in the center, has been reaching out to partners and saying, what exciting and robust remote work could we possibly do with you and for you? And we've gotten so many great suggestions. And so we're going to have a really exciting and diverse array of ways that our students can engage remotely. And that might be helping Tri-County Mental Health Services create an annual celebration that's including some archival work going back into, they have an important anniversary milestone that they want to celebrate, and they want students who can go back through some of their records and look at photographs and do archival work, but also students who'd be willing to think about vision and marketing, and so, you know, and everything in between. We also have partners who would love for us to do a lot of youth-facing work, and so I want to kind of pass this over to Ellen because she can give a couple great examples, including a brand new platform that we've created that we are super excited about and that we think is going to be a national model.
Yeah, thanks, Darby. As Darby mentioned, we've been really excited to work on this platform that was actually developed by a biology professor here at Bates. It's called Bates Connect. And the idea is that students through their courses would create learning activities, videos, lesson plans that our local K-12 teachers would then get to shop for. It's free, but get to go in and peruse and sort of think about what might help augment what they're trying to do with their kids. And we've got some, you know, some really interesting things that are coming out of that. So I'll just give you an example. Right now, we have a professor in the neurology department who's teaching a course on gene editing. And he wants his students to develop videos or learning activities related both to sort of the science and the technology of gene editing, but also the ethics of gene editing. And so I reached out to some teachers, some high school teachers who were super excited to kind of get engaged and be thought partners with our students. And so that that opportunity is not limited just to education students. It's limited. It's open to students who are taking courses all across the curriculum. So that's been really exciting for us. We also, like many places, the K-12 schools, the public schools, are really struggling to figure out how to open up safely and give students the support that they need. It's a monumental task. And our K-12 friends are really excited to have our students, you know, Zoom into classrooms and do one-on-one tutoring or do remote mentoring over, you know, lunch or breakfast in the schools. Georgia is going to continue working with Hillview, trying to bring our students in remotely again to do some programming in kind of the after school settings. So there are a lot of opportunities for our students to kind of dig in there. I was just talking to some teachers today who felt like they're feeling a little overwhelmed by the technology pieces of how to do remote teaching. And they're interested in perhaps having some Bates students kind of come in and help be thought partners with them just around the technology pieces. So there are a lot of really interesting ways to get engaged this semester, even though mostly we won't be in person. We will do probably some in-person work, especially work that involves kind of getting outside, doing.
Yeah, so a great example of that is a public art project that is going to involve partners with the Chamber of Commerce, the Bureau of Tourism, the Downtown Business Association, a wide range of partners. just a minute, please go away. A wide range of partners, sorry, lots of people in my house. And those students are going to be creating an inventory of all the public art in Lewiston and Auburn. And then they're going to be doing GIS mapping and creating walking tours and driving tours, and also maybe a selfie tour, like where are the coolest places to take selfies with public art in this community. And so that is a super exciting project that's going to be able to happen during COVID, because even though students may be off campus, they won't be interacting with other human beings. They'll just be taking photographs and then coming back and uploading that into GIS and that kind of thing. So we're super excited about that project too.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Ellen and Darby. I'm going to send another softball question here to our students. And so anyone can jump in here, but one student was asking about Bates being outdoorsy. Is it true? And is that something that you enjoy? So for any of the students who are maybe the most outdoorsy, can you talk about opportunities you get to engage in the outdoors and embrace? Even if you've never done something before, do you get to try it for the first time? So whoever would like to talk about the outing club and outdoors, things like that.
Well, I can start off, and then if people wanna add on, feel free. I will say, although I hesitate to generalize about the entire Bates student body, I do think that coming to college in Maine, we are all surrounded by some really, really wonderful outdoor spaces that I think that Bates and the Bates Outing Club make it really easy to take advantage of. And I can just talk briefly about the Bates Outing Club. We celebrated our 100-year anniversary last year, so we've been around for a while. And the general mission of the Outing Club is really just to make sure that students understand that students all come to Bates with varying levels of interest and passion and experience doing anything outside. Some students come to Bates having just taken a gap year through hiking the Appalachian Trail, and some students come to Bates and they've never slept outside, they've never gone on a hike, and Bates Outing Club really just wants to make sure that all students have the same amount of resources and gear and fun and knowledge when it comes to approaching the outdoors, because Maine is so robust in that way. If you're interested in knowing about like just general day-to-day events with the Bates Outing Club, we have an event calendar that is obviously out of date at this point, but you'll see our last year's event calendar. If you just look online, Bates Outing Club, you'll see it. And I'll just highlight one of my very favorite weekends with the Bates Outing Club is our Katahdin weekend, which is in late October, the last weekend that Baxter State Park, a beautiful state park just a couple hours north of us, is open. And we fit as many first years as can safely fit in a van, and we drive up to Baxter, and we all summit Katahdin, which is the highest peak in the state. And it's really wonderful just seeing so many Batesies, so many first years. For some of them, it's their first hike. For some of them, it's their first time in a state or a national park. It's really awesome to see. And for some of them, they're like, I've already summited this 10 times. I just wanted to do it again. So it's really wonderful that people can come together in the outdoors. And I think that Bates does do a great job of that. So I don't know if people want to add on.
I can add. I would say that I came to Bates not super outdoorsy, and I've remained not super outdoorsy. So there's also plenty of room for people who aren't super outdoorsy. But that being said, we met on our ASOP freshman year, which is our orientation program where all of the first years go out and do different things for 4 nights. And we hiked Grafton Notch, backpacked. That was sort of big for me. And then also I went and hiked Katahdin as well with Dylan. So there are opportunities for people who aren't the most comfortable in the outdoors.
And you make really good friends.
I'll hop in and talk about one of the events that Bates does every year, or starting my first year, is the Lost Valley Takeover. So just 10 minutes away from Bates campus, so like super close by. There's this tiny ski hill, and the school gets the whole mountain for the whole evening, and there's live music in the lodge for people that don't really want to get outside, but then there's definitely everyone on the mountain skiing or snowboarding or on the tubing hill. And I've, rented skis from the Outing Club in the past, which is super easy. But this past year, I actually went and got a snowboard, which I've never done before. So I tried out some snowboarding, which hurt my wrists and my butt a little bit, but it was so worth it. It was a lot of fun.
And the nice part of that is it is free. to go to Lost Valley and get your lift pass for staff and faculty as well. So we can all enjoy the fun. I do love when I see Bates students trying it for the first time. So again, for folks that are nervous, there is a nice bunny slope, but I think the state of Maine does a wonderful job at leaning into the winter. You know, if you're coming from far away, if you're coming from southern states and you've never experienced the Maine winter, we will help you. We will help guide you. But it is something that I think we really embrace, knowing the winter months can be long, that we try to get ahead of that. I did have one last question. I have an eye on time here. It's about 10 minutes here before 6 o'clock, and thought this would be a really nice question to kind of wrap things up on. And so I'll ask each of our panelists, which I know the one who goes first may have the easiest opportunity here. But if you could one student asked what are a few words you would use to describe the Lewiston community as a whole? And knowing the theme of this conversation, I'd love if you could maybe in just a couple words, maybe try to encapsulate what Lewiston means to you or how you think of Lewiston. So I'm going to send it to the students first, since it'll probably be easiest for them to kick off. So I'll start with Dylan and Georgia, but what are a few words, maybe one or two words that when you think of Lewiston, will come to mind?
Okay, so the first one is vibrant. And then my second one is welcoming.
I'll go a different route and I'll say beautiful in all 4 seasons. That was like 5 words.
Okay.
But Lewiston and the state of Maine, beautiful in all 4 seasons. Coming from California, I was a little scared.
I'll say curious, just when being near community members and how much they want to talk and chat and get to know you. I think that the members are curious.
Well, so I've got a couple of words. One word is collaborative, and that's because I've worked in a lot of different communities. I've done community engaged work in a lot of different places, and I have never been in a place where people were so willing to sit down together and work on something, and that's pretty cool. And my other word is evolving. You know, this is a really, really exciting time, as Tyler said, to come to Lewiston, because it is going through a period of real change, and you can come and you can be a part of that. So those are my words.
And I'll say authentic, in that this feel, and the other word we think of as synonymous, but it's real. It feels like a real place. You know, a lot of colleges like Bates were intentionally set in places that are set apart from the real world, right? So they're like up on little mountains or in like remote coastal towns or in a cornfield or whatever. These are amazing schools. They have great things to offer. One of the things that you know they do is they try to pull away, and there are virtues to that, but there are also virtues to being in the thick of it. And I think of Bates as being kind of in the thick of this really interesting real place. You know, Lewiston Auburn is, you know, it has working class roots, plenty of that, you know, still very much here, part of the vibrancy, right? Is that this is a real place where real people are working hard to try to figure things out. They're reaching across differences to collaborate. There are plenty of challenges still to evolve into. So it feels like a real place in ways that a lot of, for me at least, having been in a lot of different higher education contexts, a lot of them did not feel real in the really positive ways that Bates does. So I love this community for how real it is, and I respect it for that.
I would say eclectic. Eclectic both in the people who choose to make Lewiston their home, and eclectic in the landscape. And I would also say deeply loyal, really, really loyal. I think Tyler exhibits that, having been born and raised here. You meet a lot of folks that take a lot of pride in their city for a wide array of reasons. So deeply loyal.
Well, thank you for that. I think that's a nice piece to hear. For me, the 2 words immediately come to mind are resilient, and then for obvious reasons, home. So I think that everyone did an incredible job at encapsulating that. So thank you for ending on such a high note. For the folks that joined us today, please don't let the conversation end today. There are so many other ways that you can connect with all of us. All of our contact information is right online, whether it's to the Harward Center staff, the admission deans and counselors, or even Bates Ask a Student. Lots of ways to connect with us, and also a lot of programming coming down over the next coming months and weeks and months. So if you're looking at other ways to engage with us, whether it's through the You Visit virtual tour, slate of events that are going to happen in the second 2 weeks in September, as well as the 2 weeks in October, we'll have a lot of opportunities to continue to engage, answer your questions, and connect with you on important issues. So please, please, please continue to follow up with us. And we thank you for taking time out of your day to join us. We know that this is a really difficult time for a lot of folks. So our thoughts are with you and your families as you try to navigate this, and certainly hope you are all healthy and well. So again, on behalf of all of us, thank you so much for joining us, and have a great evening. Take care.